This is me recording how my strategy works exactly. So to explain it, how the strategy works, I probably wrote it down already. You just take the first trade at the close of the 8:35 candle. So at the close of the candle, that's here. In this case, it's a red candle. And that means the first trade starts at 8:40. It has to start at 8:40. NAS100 5-minute time frame, CAT plus 2, right? Sorry, CAT, which is what, UTC plus 2, something like that. So that's the entire strategy. But there's obviously some gray areas that you'll get into. Ordinarily, I want to enter a trade once it hits a support and resistance at either two good sized candles, not two small ones, in the direction of the reaction. Like it hits the support, it goes up, hits a line, then it starts going down. You sell that if you get two good candles, or if you get one candle that's big enough for it, but not a candle that's too big, otherwise you don't enter. So I really do this by eye. I don't mark this anymore, but here is the level that this trade is based on. You can see right here, there's a level here, and you see interactions with price at that other level there. And I think this first candle is good enough to enter on, but that was the close of the 8:30. So we open the trade at the close of the 8:35. Clearly this is a loss, and I will target 1 to 2.2 in charting, because when I actually take the trade, and I'll see it here, I'll add you see the price here is 29,120.39. That's where the stop loss should be. In my actual my broker, wherever I'm entering the trade, I'll put 29,121.39. So I add 1 to whatever the price is. I add 1. So in the charts, it has to be closer to a 2.2. So in the charts, if it doesn't hit a 2.2, if it hits a 2.1, that's still a 1 to 2, obviously, on the chart. But in real life, it's not really a 1 to 2. Obviously, you can get good or worse entries in real life, so that it doesn't really align. But based on the extra 1 that I add in the charting service thing, based on that, a 1 to 2.2 on the charting service pretty much makes up for that. That'll be 1 to 2 in real life. So that's that. And the next really reaction is this here, but that's obviously too small. But then the next time we see a trade is here, because a trade will only ever happen if you get a reaction from somewhere. So all these candles that are going in one direction, you can just ignore all these green candles, because that will never constitute a trade. But actually, if I get one candle going down like this, I can consider that to be a pullback, even though it's very small. So if I get a candle that goes down a bit, and then it touches a level, and then we start going up after that level, I could enter that trade. So in this case, you could kind of say that it pulled back to this level here, and then started getting green candles, but these green candles are really too small for me to get into a trade for. They're too small. Wick's massive. Would have lost either way, but I could do that. And you see, it doesn't really sit right where this candle goes down. It doesn't really sit right at any level. A level would be like the top of these, the peaks of the wicks would be more so where I would put a level. So that wouldn't even be a trade, but it's interesting. So here, obviously, this is a level. We're looking at the peaks of these wicks. They don't line up 1 to 1. Like the top of this peak doesn't line up with the top of this, but it still interacts with it, and that's still a level for me. So I'd like to sell, because it's reacting there. And these two candles are clearly reacting, obviously, right? And you can see that the wicks are huge, but the bodies are small. And I really care about the bodies. The bodies are too small for me to really get an entry on. But then the next body is massive. It's actually kind of too big for me to trade, but I'm pretty sure I got a trade on this anyway. And I really just want 2 candles, right, for the entry. But in this case, I took 3 candles for the entry, because the candle that's worth it comes after 2 other candles. And maybe that's justification, just explaining that I probably shouldn't have taken this trade in the first place. So I probably shouldn't even have taken this trade in the first place. because it's just raw. But I did take it and I did lose it, and I'll just mark this as a loss when I'm doing my backtesting here on TradingView, even though it's not as objective as something where you can't see the charts. I'm just doing TradingView like free. This would be a loss, but actually this isn't even a trade looking back. So looking back, I shouldn't have taken this, and I shouldn't have taken this. This also isn't a trade. This candle's too big for it to have been a trade. So really the next trade comes here, which is actually also a loss because these two candles here are big enough for me to get a trade off. I think, yeah, they're big enough, but are they really reacting to any level? You could say they're reacting to like this level here. Not really. There isn't really a level where they end up down there, but I'll probably still take this trade because it's more or less close enough. As you can see, it also loses. So there's a bunch of different places where I could have taken the second trade of this day. Oops, that should be an L. But no matter where I take it, it pretty much loses. This is just a day for 2 losses. Obviously, I could cherry pick and say that I didn't take this trade because this didn't really line up with anything, so I ignored it, and I only took this next trade, which lined up perfectly with even where we took the first trade. You see, this level was touched here, here, and it came back down to here. And then I took this trade off of one candle because it's big enough, though it's almost too big. So yeah, I could just say, oh, I took this one trade and clearly won, and I got a loss and a win that day with on a 1 to 2 is a plus 1% day. But that would be a lie, because there were a lot of opportunities to mess up earlier, and if you're backtesting, pretty much you're better off just assuming you're going to mess up and take the worst trade possible, because that's real life. Here on the next day, we can see this is really simple and straightforward. There's a huge level right here. Price interacted with it a lot. Price went away, came back down, gave us 2 candles. Neither of them are particularly big to enter on their own, but this one closes, this green one right here. So you see I'm putting the buy or sell thing on the next candle, because basically enter at the end of the last candle, beginning of the next one, whatever. So as you can see, it's a good trade, but it's a loss. Now delete this so you can see this here. So if these 2 candles here, they do touch a zone, kind of, not really, unless you want to consider this a zone, you might. So you could say this is a zone. These 2 candles come up to touch this zone, to be on par with this. You see what I mean here? They're on par, then it starts going down. And you could say that in this case, you could enter off of these 2 candles selling as soon as this trade ends. You see what I mean? Like you start the sell right here, stop loss there, and look for a 1 to 2, which would have lost in this case. But the reason you can't do that is because by the time this first trade lost, and you can't take a trade before the other one ends. That's another very important rule. By the time this first trade ends, it's already into this other candle, so it's too late to take this trade. So we have to wait for the next trade, which in this case is this next green candle, which you can see does touch this area here. And again, maybe it's a bit controversial, but you can see this point here comes down to this point here, comes down a bit lower, comes down even lower. But when it comes down here, it's close to where these other ones were, so it's valid for a trade. And you could just take the trade right here. It's a big enough candle for one trade, but again, it's kind of looking big enough that it might be too big for one trade, but I think it's okay. So the first trade on this day was a loss, and the second trade for this day was a winner. And I just say loss, and I just say 2, because it's a 1 to 2. Really, I'm looking for a 1 to 2.2 on the charting, but I don't care, I'll just call it 2. And that's a 1% day. So the first day was minus 2%, second day was plus 1%. Here we've got this next day. Now, we do kind of have a trade here. And I think I did take this loss. I think. Because, I mean, look, you can even push this further back, right? Because price came here, touched here, came here as well, and it came back here. And if this was in our time, we could have taken a trade off of this green candle here, if it was in time, right? Because it does touch the zone just fine after this big red candle pushes us into the zone. But by the time 840 comes around, at the close of this 835 candle, we've already messed up this zone. Already went up, came down, went up, had a red candle, and then went up again. If this was 2 green candles, that would have been fine for an entry, but it's not, so we can't enter that. Conversely, there is a zone here, so we can't enter off this green candle, so we look for whatever next zone price reacts to. There's this zone here. Let me delete this first one. Yeah, there's this zone here that we can see right here. The price came back to touch over here, and we get 2 red candles as a result. Now, is this zone messy? Yes, it's messy. And I'll take you after this to a week where none of the trades are messy. They're all super clean. And it was an amazing week. Probably didn't even trade it. Because, you know, you're just unlucky like that, right? So here's a trade, right? And we do a 1 to 2.2. And it was a super short trade. This trade ended like 4 candles at least. Somewhere to 4 candles, which is like 5-minute charts is like 20-minute trade. And it's a 1 to 2. Cool. But you know, this trade was a bit tricky, a bit dubious, so we can just not count it, even though it's a perfectly legitimate win as far as I'm concerned. Let's say that in real life I didn't see it. So next we can see that if we skip this trade, price came back down to this area very, very nicely with this green candle here, and this is also a perfectly legitimate trade. Now let me be clear. When I take a losing trade, I'll take another trade. Okay? If I take 1 losing trade in a day, I'll take another trade. So that if I lose 2 trades, that's -2. But I could lose and win, and I could go from -1 to +1 if the second trade wins. But of course, both trades could lose, and that's just -2 for the day, and that's fine. But if I take if my first trade wins, if I take 1 trade and it wins, that's +2 for the day. I'm done that day. I do not take a second trade. I did my testing, and it just doesn't seem to be worth it. It makes way more sense for me to just, if I win the first trade, I just stop for the day. It does sound a bit dumb. It's like when you lose, you try and trade again. So you have the potential to lose twice, but you only have the potential to win once. You can do your own testing. And ideally, this video is for me, but as I'm recording it, I think I might just post it. You can do your own testing, but for me personally, this seems to be the best. So that's how it is. So if I won that last trade, I would have just been done for the day. But assuming I didn't see that trade, let's take this trade here. Right? Price came down very nicely to these levels and pushed off. The candle is big enough for it to be 1 entry trade. And that's not clearly defined. I should just be clear. And yeah, didn't work out. Cool. I'm stopped out. Now, as I'm stopped out, let's call this a loss. So that's a loss for the day. As I'm stopped out, we can see that another trade emerges again when price comes up here. Let me just expand this so you can see a bit clearly. Hope I didn't move it. Anyway, price comes back up here with this second green candle here and touches this area, which we already called the zone, and gives us 1 big red candle. And this candle is big enough to enter on its own. If we weren't already in trade, we'd have just entered that. Now you see the second candle stops us out. And the second candle is a small trade. Small red candle. So by the time we're stopped out by the second candle, we can enter at the close of the second candle. So we do have a big enough trade. The first red candle is big enough to enter on its own. But since the second one is small, we can still enter. Stop loss up there. Take profit at a 1 to 2.2. And that's all we need. And it's a winner, obviously. So I'm just going to ignore that the first trade of this day could have been a winner. I'll just say that it's a, whatever, +1% day rather than +2. Now we go to the next day. This one, thank Lord God Almighty, is a simple trade. There's obviously a huge zone right here, lots of wicking around here. The price comes, touches this wick just perfectly. We enter on this big candle that's big enough to be an entry on its own. And we enter at, I don't know what I even mean by saying at. I don't know what I was talking about. But we enter that trade at 840, sorry. And, sorry, let me just be clear. This is the 835 candle, and it closed at 840. You cannot take a trade before the 835 candle closes. You cannot take a trade before 840. And that's a clean win. Like I said, if I win my first trade, I don't look for another one. So that's that for the day. Then it's the last day for the trading week. This was last week. Sorry, this was yesterday actually, Friday. Now, there's no trade I can enter here, right? So I wait for price to do its thing. And technically there is a zone right here, right? Like price could have come back up to this point here because of this little point here, but I mean, it really doesn't happen with this green candle. And so that's like, you could take the sell there, but it really didn't happen. And I didn't even take that sell yesterday, so I'm not going to count it at all. You see, there's really not that much going on because like the real levels we don't really interact with much before. Here's a level right here. So like I was saying, if I was trading before 835, this candle right here would have been a good candle to enter on because it touches the level really well. Enter here would have been a 1 to 2, right? But we stick to the time we trade because we can't see the future. We don't know that this trade at this time would have been a great trade to enter. So we just keep going. This green candle here could be a retracement back up, but the green candle's top wick didn't touch any levels, so we ignore it. There's another green candle here, but the green candle top wick didn't touch any levels, so we ignore it. And so the next level we see, funny enough, is down here at the bottom. We get 2 green candles. When you get 2 green candles, it's worth looking what levels do we have before. Now, I don't like going too far back for levels, but I did this time. And you really don't want to go beyond, like, these levels are from yesterday. And you don't ideally want to do that. There's usually levels close enough, but it's just perfect. It just goes straight down. And a lot of time when price goes straight hard in one direction, it sometimes looks for somewhere to reverse them. Or it just takes all your money like it always does. But anyway, clearly there's levels here, and clearly that's where price came to. You could have, there's 2 candles here. So you could have taken on the second candle or whatever, what have you. It's up to you. You take this trade, and it's a clear and easy 1 to 2.2. And that's the first trade of the day. And ta-da, 1 to 2. And it's the first win. The first trade is a win, so we leave it alone. So let's see how this week did. This is a 2%. This is another 2%. That's 4. This is a 1% day. That's 5. And this is another 1% day. That's 6. And then Monday was a minus 2% day. So that's a plus 4% week. So plus 4% week. If you did that every week, that's a plus 16%. But this strategy is not winning every week. There's some losing weeks, but in my experience, it's few. Most of them are winning weeks. And again, if we go back over to, I think that was Tuesday maybe, where we ignored a trade we could have won. So if we go back to this trade here that we could have won, I think this was the day. No, it was not the day, my bad. It was Wednesday. If we go back to Wednesday, trade we could have won, the day we could have won a trade, because we ignored the first winning trade. We said, okay, maybe it's a bit funny, it's a bit hard to spot, even as you're there. We ignored it. But let's say you actually took this trade of these 2 candles, because it might be hard to spot, but it's not that crazy hard to spot. Say this is 1 to 2. This completely changes the performance of the week, because anyway, let me just count the numbers. Starting from Monday, this is minus 2. This is plus 1. That makes minus 1 for the week so far. Plus 2, that makes plus 1 for the week. Plus 2, that's 3 for the week. And plus 2, that's 5 for the week. So this could be a plus 5% week. Best case scenario, all trades traded perfectly. You don't usually get the best case scenario, or at least sometimes you won't, because in the moment when it's happening, as the candles are developing, you may mess up. So I like to subtract 2% from the week to say what I might have realistically gotten, minus 2 or minus 3%, even though there was like a 7% week where I only got plus 1. But yeah, I think I got about 4.5% this week, because I started my challenge at 3.5 and I passed it at 8%. So this is the strategy that passed me my account. Super long video, I'm sure, but yeah, thank you for watching, even if it's just me that's watching. and I hope this strategy can be of some value to you. I've honestly been jumping up and down, running around with different strategies, and part of the problem is that I'll trade it well for a while, and then I'll just mess it up and basically forget how the strategy works. Like, I've been passing accounts, like maybe 3 or 4 in the last, I'd want to say 6 months, maybe 2 or 3. But as soon as I pass, I don't really make any money because I forget how the strategy works. So that's part of what this video is for, just to remind myself how to trade. And I'll be back testing other weeks with this strategy. So thanks a lot for the videos. Hope this strategy works for you. But if too many people make money with this strategy, I'm gonna have to delete it off the internet. But anyway, bye.